tonight and join the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2018. Randy Moss, T.O., both are neither, and it looks like right now only 13% think T.O. is going to get in. 4% say neither. That's kind of crazy.
Well,
but 38% say both.
Yeah.
Wow. For more on the Hall of Fame, yes. Oh, by the way, Peter Schrager is joining us right now. I thought we were going to Steve Wyche first. Hey guys. What's up? What's up?
How we doing?
Good, good. We got a lot of hot Hall of Fame talk that we're doing today, but Steve Wyche, he's at the scene right now. Let's welcome him in and see if he has any cool updates for us. It's got to be nerve-wracking right now for a lot of the finalists, just kind of waiting and not knowing what's going on. Right, Steve?
That's right. Look, most of these finalists are in their hotels in downtown Minneapolis. We're actually in Bloomington, and they're going to be waiting for several more hours as they still negotiate this process. Of course, the topic discussion is going to be Randy Moss and Terrell Owens, the two wide receivers. They're saving that for the last discussion. The current discussion going on right now, Colleen, is the offensive lineman, but just a little while ago, there was the presentation of the one slam dunk entrant. That's mid linebacker Ray Lewis. But then here's Dan Pompei from Chicago presenting Brian Urlacher, saying why Urlacher should also get into the Hall of Fame this year.
In 6 of Urlacher's 13 seasons, he received more votes for the AP All-Pro team than Ray Lewis did. In another season, they tied. Lewis received more in 6 other seasons. So in 13 seasons, they tied for votes in the eyes of AP voters, many of whom are sitting around this table.
Yeah, one of the cool things about the process of what we're doing here, and we've done for years, is the selectors have allowed us into their sanctuary to kind of give you smidgets of the presentation of what's going on here. We're not allowed to hear the debate because that does get a little testy. But again, we're peeling back the onion here so you can hear what goes on in the selective process. And as I said, later on it'll be T.O. and Randy Moss. But the offensive linemen who are being presented right now, 5 of them up for grabs. And this is where a lot of the selectors I've spoken to expect multiple entrants to go into the Hall for the class of 2018. Colleen?
Steve Wyche with the latest from Hall of Fame voting. He's got the pulse on everything that's going on. I want up-to-the-minute updates, really, on what's going on out there, right, Steve? I'm going to hold you to it. So, let's talk about this. Let's dig in a little bit more on this. Peter Schrager, I want to give you an official welcome. Welcome to the weekend.
Welcome to the weekend, Peter.
You can watch Peter Monday through Friday, and, you know, I know that you feel pretty passionate about this whole process and how they kind of decide who gets in and who doesn't.
Well, Colleen, I think the viewer at home and maybe the guys here, maybe even some people on television don't realize the ex-player has no voice in that room. The ex-coach has no real voice in that room. There's 2 players, James Lofton and Dan Fouts, who are in the room. But there are 48 voters, and 46 of them are sports writers. So we're at a table with Michael Robinson, a Super Bowl champion, Steve Smith, a future Hall of Famer, and yet Mike Garafolo, myself, and Colleen would have a better chance of voting on the Hall of Fame than either one of you two. So there's a feeling amongst the players who are waiting for that knock, well, who's deciding my fate? Why is it those guys? And the argument is they're impartial, they can come in. But as you saw, Dan Pompei making the case for Brian Urlacher. It's not Lance Briggs, it's not Lovie Smith. It's a guy who covered him as a journalist trying to go in front of 47 others saying, here's why my guy belongs to get in. And that is a big pressure point for a lot of these finalists who haven't gotten the call. Why are we being represented by writers and not by ex-players and coaches who have been on the field and been in the trenches and have seen what we can do firsthand?
Because you said that sometimes they're supposed to be unbiased, but sometimes that's not the case.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead, Mike.
I think you're right, man. It's weird because writers are going to have a totally different perspective on guys than what ex-players would have on guys. And then when you look at the Hall of Fame, isn't it about what they did when they were when they were playing the actual game? And sometimes I think, and Steve and I've had this conversation back and forth for a couple of weeks now. Why does what happens off the field have anything to do with this process? It's about the best players on the field, correct?
Yes. So let's. I don't even want to hear you talk about it. Let's just right here. So here's why I stand with it. Where you use the word non-biased or not to be biased. Yeah. Let's just take the poop in the hand, throw it against the wall, see what sticks. Which is the truth. Fact of the matter is, when you don't speak to a writer, they hold that against you. When you are maybe as a player, you take offense to a writer that writes an article, they take you can't take offense to a writer writing an article, but a writer could take offense to you shunning them off when you don't like how they write. So one of the things that I think, you keep the writers in there because those writers have went to school. They take some of them, 97% of them, take their job very seriously. And just like in life, not everyone is gonna cherish and hold what other writers cherish and hold. But I do believe you have to have a mixture of people, because you and I have had conversations where you have taught me things and I have taught you things, and we respect each other enough to be transparent and say, wow, Steve, I didn't really look at it that way.
But
and
Steve, this ain't the Hall of Fame, though.
But I'm
You see what
using this.
saying?
I'm using this as an example, and I'll give you another one. When I went to Baltimore for a short period of time in Carolina, I never did production meetings. Why? Because production meetings were done on Friday. One time I got pushed over by 2 different guys on production meetings. And so I quit doing them because on Fridays was my massage day. A lady who massaged me for 8 years every Friday, right? So that one guy who I blew off a few times was Jim Nance. He didn't like that. I spent 5 minutes in a room with Jim Nance when I got to Baltimore after Chad Steele told me, go talk to her. I said, I don't do production meetings anymore. He told me, explained it. I explained it to him. I went in there with 5 minutes with Jim Nance, and Jim Nance said, wow, I always thought he was a jerk.
There you go.
But now I see why. And guess what? I've worked with Jim Nance on Super Bowl, on our Thursday night, and I love Jim Nance, and he loves me, and we have a great relationship now. But unless I was given that opportunity, he had a perception of me and yet never met me.
But what does that have to do? My whole thing is about the actual play on the field. A Hall of Fame is about being great
I
on
understand,
the
but
field.
what I'm trying to say is that has to do with those individuals in there get a perception at times with or without meeting a player, and unfortunately, not all of them, but some of them bring that grievance into that room.
Let's address the elephant in the room.
And here's also, that room has a hell of a lot too much salt and not enough pepper in there.
There is some more diversity recently.
And I'm serious about that, because you got to have people that understand some of these people.
But just like you saying, it doesn't have enough pepper in there. I mean, ex-players can say it's not enough ex-players in there.
Absolutely.
So it should be a mix of everybody. Players, non-players.
The elephant in the room is obviously Terrell Owens, right?
Absolutely.
Randy Moss, obviously everyone here is excited to see if he gets in. We all think that's a slam dunk.
Right.
But if you listen to Steve Wyche, who I'll tell you guys, Steve Wyche is as plugged in with this Hall of Fame voting process as any single person who's not in that room. He just said that possibly 3 offensive linemen are going to get in this year.
Because there's a log jam, too.
So you're saying now that Joe Jacoby and Kevin Mawai and Steve Hutchinson and Tony Baselli, well, that means T.O. and Moss are not getting in this year. And that one of them is, and maybe the other one isn't.
Yep.
And that is what's it. There's only 5 spots that can get in. And if you're telling me 3 offensive linemen who are not, there are no Kevin Mawai jerseys in the crowd right now, but they are a position on the field.
Yep.
He was the best at his craft.
Great.
He was great. Not everyone. It's the Hall of Fame. It's not the Hall of Great.
But here's what you can't do.
Stereotype there, because the offensive
It's not the
lineman is the
popular
media-friendly guy, right?
Yeah, but here's what you can't do, too, as well, just being, I got to be myself, is you can't go on Radio Row and say, if I don't get in, it's a disservice to the whole thing.
Wearing
because
sunglasses.
That's what T.O. is doing.
Wearing sunglasses and saying, I got a basketball game Saturday. I won't be there.
But the reason why he says that is because look at his numbers.
Right.
He should be in the Hall of Fame.
I understand that, but if you really want to get in there and you say it doesn't matter, but it does, maybe kind of do something.
Let me put you on the spot. Put you on the spot. 2 years from now, you're going to be eligible. You're going to be 3 years.
4 years.
You're going to be campaigning to get to the Hall of Fame? I can't see that.
You shouldn't have to campaign.
I'm not saying campaign, but don't go on there and knock the people that's in the room. I'm saying put more diversity. I'm not saying that the service, what they're doing is a disservice to the whole institution of the Hall of Fame. You can't do that, because you know what that's like? That's like, go home, tell your wife, hey, it was a good meal, but if you did this, you know what she gonna say? You better cook your own damn food. That's what's going to happen. It's going to be tough.
But Steve, his numbers are the best
agree.
in history.
And you are correct.
So my thing is,
what would you like? How would you like it to be done?
But T.O. saying that, what makes him wrong in saying that?
Nothing.
Because it is an issue that he's not in the Hall of Fame.
It doesn't make it wrong, because we're not in the room. I
don't get it.
The people in the room have a problem with it, so
Yeah.
you probably need to stop saying it.
So basically play to the room.
I'm not saying
when the Hall of Fame is based off stuff I did on the field.
I'm not saying.
But now I got to play to the room. That don't make sense.
I'm not saying
Steve.
play to the room, but don't shun the room.
Don't bite the hand that feeds you. That's what
Don't
he
bite
said.
the hand that feeds you.
Why is that hand feeding me? When this is
Because that's the
football game?
process. That is the
I'm
process.
sorry, but we get into arguing like this.
Really close. Terrell Owens told us on Good Morning Football on Thursday he will not be here. He's got a basketball game in an adult league that he plays in LA. That's where he'll be.
Okay. Well,
That's a beautiful tie. I like
Thank
it.
you.
yes,
Hey,
okay.
let me tell you
Thanks so
something.
much
If he
for
get
coming
in,
today.
you best believe he gonna be up there.
He'll find a way to get in.
Yeah, he'll be back.
Don't fool yourself. That boy gonna be in there.
You and your tie, great stuff today. Thanks,
stuff,
Peter
Peter.
Put in
Schrager.
Chad Lynch.
Make sure you check it out
mic on,
Monday through Friday. Good morning.